Tonight's session is an extremely special and valuable one as we have our partners from Ownr to cover operational excellence with all of you and sharing their valuable expertise and knowledge. We have two esteemed speakers, Prisika Selvaraja, who is an account specialist at Ownr and has helped hundreds of entrepreneurs take the important step to incorporate their business. Prisika's background in data analytics and her degree in psychology allows her to pay close attention to detail, while her caring demeanor helps her to provide a great guidance to entrepreneurs. Joining Prisika is Kelvin Tran. Kelvin is a senior account specialist at Ownr. He specializes in helping aspiring Canadian entrepreneurs launch their business properly the first time. Kelvin's experience in working with startups like Applyboard allows him to provide seasoned and timely advice. His genuine interest in the startup landscape of Canada is a true asset to both Ownr and the entrepreneurs they serve. Kelvin and Prisika, thank you for being here, and I welcome you to begin the session.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction. It was so nice. Okay, so I'll just jump right into it. I will share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Perfect. Okay. So welcome everybody, and thank you so much for having us. I will just go right into kind of how we're going to go through with this. So Calvin and I will both be presenting some information on kind of how to get started, what an incorporation is, and the different business structures. We'll also talk a little bit about what to do after you've incorporated and how to maintain annual compliance, just to make sure that your corporation is correctly maintained on an annual basis. But if you do have any questions, there's going to be a Q&A section at the very end, but feel free to throw any questions into the chat as well, and we'll try to answer them as we go. And Kelvin will also be monitoring it and maybe just answer as well if it's not covered already. So I will go right in. Oh, and also at the very end, there's also a discount code for Ownr services. So stick around and you guys will also get access to the PowerPoint, but just letting you know. Okay, so three major business structures that we're going to be talking about today. So there's a sole proprietorship, which is like a business with just one person. There's partnerships and there's corporations. So Ownr specifically does help with sole proprietorships and corporations. And we'll go through kind of what the differences are between each of them. So with a sole proprietorship, we'll start there. It is the simplest form of a business. It requires the least amount of money to start and just less maintenance all around. With a sole proprietorship, though, all the money, so profits and losses go directly to you. And it's essentially just one person running a business. There's pros and cons. So you do get a name registration. There's no separate taxes. And as I mentioned, it is cheaper to get started. And that's just because it's really kind of like the business is associated to you as a person, which is also kind of a con. So there is no real legal difference between you and the business. So there's no separate entity. You are the business of its own. So that also means that you're taking on full liability when it comes to the business. So for example, if I'm selling pens, and worst case scenario, somebody writes on themselves and gets a little bit of ink and then they get a rash and now they want to sue me. As a sole proprietor, I would take on full liability for that, which means that all my personal assets are also on the line. So that is one of the cons with sole proprietorship. And then lack of continuity, which is essentially just it starts and ends with you. So it's not a business that, like, let's say, for example, my pen business prospers and it's so great and I don't want to do it anymore because I want to go on vacation and just live my best life. I can't sell the business because I basically am the business. And then there's partnerships. So with a partnership, it's pretty much the same, very similar to the sole proprietorship. Biggest difference being it's more than one person, so two or more. It's very simple. It's not as much to get started. And you do get to combine your financial resources with your partner, but that can be good and bad. So again, all profits and losses go directly to you. And sorry, what I forgot to mention with the sole proprietorship, when I say all profits go directly to you, this is personal income. So that's really important, like a really key point there. So any money that you make comes to you. It'll be included when you're doing your taxes on an annual basis. And then the cons with a partnership is the owners still share unlimited liability. So similarly to the sole proprietorship, both people and all of your personal assets will still be on the line. Also, another con is if, let's say, for example, you have a partner and their financial history is not as, or you don't know their financial history, let's say, and they're in debt. Technically, when you go into this business, if your business does make money and the bank finds out, this is money available to the bank that they can take because it's all a part of your income and it's all personal income. So this will become available, and again, because it's unlimited liability, your personal assets are on the line. So that is partnerships. And then this last one is corporation. So pros, the biggest difference is it is a separate legal entity. So again, it's not going to be associated to you as a person. You're basically creating something completely new, which does give you a little bit of separation. So if someone does sue me for my pen business, my personal assets aren't going to be on the line. Only the company's assets would be. And then also, in comparison to the other ones, ownership is transferable. So with a corporation, you're going to have shares within the company. So when I do want to go on vacation and I'm done because I've made so much money off of it and I just want to sell the company, I can do that by selling the shares of the corporation, which you wouldn't be able to do with a sole proprietorship or a partnership. It is also easier to raise money. So even getting grants or selling parts of your company, all of these things are more flexible with the corporation. And then, of course, tax advantages. So because this is now a separate entity, you have corporate taxes that you get to take advantage of, which are less than personal taxes, because technically the money that the company makes is coming directly to the company and not to you as a person, until of course you pay yourself out, and you have some options, and we'll talk about that as well. And then continuous existence, because you can always transfer ownership and the business will always be there. And in terms of cons, it is definitely going to be a little bit more expensive to get started because of all of these aspects to the corporation. With the separate entity, you're going to need all of those documents that structure your business. You'll need to file your taxes separately, and there is some ongoing paperwork to maintain it. And we'll go over that too. So when is the right time to incorporate? There's two main factors here. There's the liability aspect, and then there's the taxes. So I'll go right into that. So from a liability perspective, there's a pretty big spectrum here. So there's businesses that are lower risk. So this could be like a marketing consultant or even just retail. Like if I'm selling, like honestly, a pen business is probably low risk. So let's put that on the low risk side. And then there's higher risk businesses like home renovations and moving services, because they probably have employees. These are operational working companies, and they probably work with heavy equipment, and there's just more that can go wrong in these industries. So they're higher risk. So in these particular instances, you'll probably be more likely and more inclined to incorporate. And then the second reason is, of course, taxes. So as I mentioned, corporate taxes are lower than personal tax rates. So corporate taxes can actually go anywhere between approximately 15% versus personal tax rates, depending on how much you're making, can be significantly higher, as I'm sure a lot of us have experienced. And one of the great things about incorporating is the more money that you keep within the corporation, the more money you'll save, because you're taxed at a lower amount. Also, if you do choose to pay yourself out, you have a lot of different options there. So you can pay yourself out in dividends, you can pay yourself a salary or a wage. And there's like, you could always connect with an accountant and they'll be able to advise you on exactly what payment structure you should adopt so that you can maximize on some of these corporate tax rates. So those would be the biggest two reasons. So let's say you're high risk and you're making a lot of money, so you want to maximize on how much money you can save within the corporation. So if you were to get incorporated, there's two major parts here. So there's the government registration, and then there's also the corporate organizational documents. So the government registration is just part one. This is where you get your articles of incorporation, and essentially it's the document that states your business is active and you get a business number, you created an identity for your business. The second part is the actual structure of your corporation. So when you've incorporated with the government, all you've really done is saying, hey, I'm creating this business entity. This is the name I want to operate under. The second part is who actually owns the company? How many shares of the company do they own? What dollar amount were these shares issued at? What other roles have been assigned within the company? And legally, there are certain roles that need to be assigned, even if it's just one person involved in the company. And we'll talk about that as well. But these are the kind of the corporate organizational documents that you'll need when you are incorporating. So these are the two big parts. If you only get the government registration, only half of your incorporation is complete. So what to consider when incorporating? So super important things to know is, well, you'll need a company name. You do have options. You could do a numbered company or a named company. So with a numbered company, it does process significantly faster because your name doesn't need to get approved. You kind of just get a number and you're ready to go. Versus with a named company, you need to reserve the name. You need to make sure that nobody else has it. And then that becomes your company's brand. And there are also other points to it too. So depending on your jurisdiction, there are aspects to it. And we could talk about that more detail at the end. But then you'll also want to look at share structure. So this will be something that you'll consider if you have, when you're thinking about your business on the long term. So let's say, for example, you think down the line, you're going to be bringing on investors and stuff. You'll probably want to create a specific share structure because you might not want to give them the same type of shares that you own. Again, this will be stuff that an accountant will probably advise to you based on the business structure that you plan on building and like your expectations for the business over the course of the next few years, but definitely something to keep in mind when you are incorporating so that you can prepare it ahead of time. And then of course, shareholders. So who's going to own the company, what percentage they own, what type of shares they own, directors. So these are part of the roles that I was mentioning. So legally, even if there's only one person involved, you need all three of these roles: shareholder, director, and one president. We do have vice president, secretary on this page here as well, but these are additional roles. But legally, you do need at least one president. And even if it's just you need to have your name assigned to all three of them. Directors are kind of like the mind of the corporation, so decision makers, and then officers are more of the operational roles. So who has signing authority and more of like the day-to-day work. And then steps after, or actually, maybe I'll pause here before I move forward. Do we have any questions?
Yes, there's a question in the chat for you. Is a social enterprise a corporation?
A social enterprise is a corporation. Yeah, but there's different types. So like, I guess depending on the type of social enterprise, there could be a business social enterprise, and there's also nonprofit organizations as well, and they are slightly different. But yes, you can incorporate a social enterprise. Anything else you would add to that, Calvin, or?
Nothing I'll add. I'll drop a link to the individual who asked that question. A social enterprise does operate on a spectrum, whereas Prasika mentioned, you go from a full for-profit company all the way down to a not-for-profit organization. So if you're somewhere within there, you can be identified as a social enterprise, but it really comes down to the nuances of how you plan to operate this business. and that'll determine what where you end up on the spectrum of a social enterprise company.
Perfect. Okay, I think I see a few more questions coming. A lot more questions. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll answer a few more, and then maybe some of them will get answered as we go through. So I'll just answer, what are the advantages of a numbered name? Oh, so like I would say like the biggest advantage of a numbered name is it just comes super fast. So if you're in a rush to get incorporated, and some people are, that is probably one of the fastest ways to get the incorporation set up. Most incorporations, they do come in fairly quickly, depending on if the name is already reserved or how common the name is. But numbered companies typically come the fastest. Okay, can you incorporate a charity as well? Is it similar or different from a nonprofit? A charity I think it would be considered a nonprofit organization, because the money that's coming in is coming from donations. It's only when it's like from selling goods and stuff, or like services, and the money comes in, that becomes a business service. But again, yeah, you could incorporate it a nonprofit, but it would be a separate process there. Maybe I'll do one more question. Can a corporation have a credit score? And should a corporation have a credit card for this reason? Kel?
Yeah, I can jump in here. So, when it comes to credit scores and individuals asking about how that gets impacted, obviously it starts with the individual looking to register a business bank account and trying to get your corporation started. So as Prasika alluded to, a corporation is that separate legal entity, right? So it will have its own bank account, it can take out loans, but it does obviously reflect on the individuals involved. Who are the shareholders? Who are the directors of the business? That will determine how much a corporation may get approved for on certain things, on whether or not you would get a grant and pieces like that. So, on that note, it really does depend on who's sort of involved in the company in terms of how some of these decisions are going to be made. And then in terms of a credit card, yes, you can get business credit cards for corporations, of course, but those are going to be, of course, tied to certain individuals as well. So as much as your corporation is a separate legal entity, it still is the individuals who sort of run the business, right? That will be taken into account of what gets when certain approvals will be made. So if there are ever any doubts, we would encourage you to speak to your accountant or speak to a financial advisor at a local bank or branch, and they would be able to help you throughout that process.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to keep going, and then if you guys do, just keep throwing in the questions there, and then we'll come back to them, or Calvin will respond if it's not already taken care of here. So steps after incorporation. So once you've already gotten the government registration and you created all of your organizational documents, there are a few things that you immediately need to do. So if you incorporate, you are legally required to set up a business bank account separate for that corporation. So one of the things also, if you do set up a sole proprietorship, legally, you're not required to set up a business bank account, but it is highly recommended, because if you are making a lot of purchases and you're making profits from the company, it's easier to have it in a separate business bank account so you can keep track of it all. So when tax season comes around, it's all available on that financial statement. But with a corporation, it is legally required, because you created a new entity. That entity needs to be recognized as its own with its own business bank account. So you'll need to open that. And then secondly, you'll need to pay for your shares. So you don't own your company until you buy the shares that you've issued. So for example, if you issue yourself 1,000 shares and you're 100% ownership, you can issue yourself these shares at 1 cent per share, which essentially means that you own 100% and you just need to buy it for $10. And this dollar amount can change, but it doesn't, it can be just a nominal amount. It just means that you are 100% owner. And then you will need to start considering whether or not you need an HST number, GST number, import, export, payroll. So these are all things that'll be dependent on kind of the industry that you're working in, as well as how much money you're making. So technically, you don't need a GST HST number until you meet that 30K mark. So $30,000 in revenue, and then you can register for the GST HST. And let me actually go to that next page. Yeah, so that's actually mentioning it here. And you can even consider registering early to obtain some tax credits as well. Calvin, did you want to maybe speak on the tax credits a little more?
Yeah, I was just going through some of the questions in the chat here, but absolutely, when it comes to registering for a tax number, I think that's one of the most common questions we get, right, Prasika? Folks like, how do I get my tax number? Does this come with the incorporation? So first and foremost, through Ownr, yes, you can absolutely register your tax number through us. And as we've talked about, that magic number is 30,000. But why would you consider getting your tax number a little bit earlier? The short of it is, again, when it comes to tax credits, is that if you sometimes, or if you would end up paying more taxes on the equipment and services that you need to do to sustain your business than you collected in terms of your products or your services offered, you may be eligible for tax credits. Right? An accountant will certainly do all the math to help sort of balance this out to determine if you are A, eligible, and B, if you're able to collect these tax credits. But in short, again, if you pay more taxes on things that you're buying for your business to be operational, then you collect from the people who are, consuming, your products or your services, then that is where you might be eligible to receive some tax credits.
Perfect. He explains it so much nicer than me. Alrighty. So the next part that we're going to touch on is annual compliance and maintenance. So if we do go down the corporation route, as we mentioned, there is some ongoing paperwork that needs to be taken care of, and some things that you do need to keep in mind on an annual basis. So responsibilities based on the business structure. So for sole proprietorship, we mentioned that it's very minimal paperwork, very minimal money. So there's no separate legal entity, no separate tax returns. You don't have to do annual returns. So it really is the less work to maintain, versus corporations. You do have a separate tax return for it because, again, it's a separate entity, and you have to file something called your annual returns, and that needs to be done on an annual basis with the provincial or federal government, depending on the jurisdiction that you incorporate through. So what is an annual return? So an annual return is actually used to inform the government that you intend to keep your legal status of your company active. It's basically a collection of documents that state your business is active, any changes that have been made to the corporation have been signed off by everybody involved in the company. And like, for example, a company is legally required to hold a shareholder meeting. But if you don't need to hold a shareholder meeting, we can waive the right to do that. And there are other documents that you would replace it with. And if you've made changes to your company address or stuff, that needs to all be filed under your minute book. And this needs to be addressed within the annual corporate return. And this is separate from your tax returns. So these are legal compliance documents that need to be filed on an annual basis. And if it's not filed, your company is actually at risk of being dissolved. So if the government were to review and see that you haven't filed them, they could just dissolve your corporation. So it would be good to make sure that you have these filed on an annual basis. And we do help with this. So we prepare all the resolutions for you. We send it. So yeah, this is actually typically done through an accountant or lawyer, but we do have these services available on our platform where we can maintain the legal compliance of the corporation, and just ensure your information is all up to date and it's all online. And we do the submission directly through the government. So how to incorporate on Ownr. So exactly how we can help you with all the steps that we just went over. And I'm going to pass it over to Kelvin to give you guys the walkthrough. And I will stop sharing my screen. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Awesome. Thanks, Prasika. I guess we'll flip it. I think I got to most questions that came through the chat. If I missed it, feel free to drop it back in there, and Prasika will maybe share a couple links and try to speak to that. I'll share my screen and take folks through Ownr and what we can do, and really, I guess, bring it to life. Everything that Prasika has set up until this point, how can you achieve that on Ownr, and what are the services that we're able to provide? So I'll look to share my screen right here. Give me 2 seconds, everyone. And if I could just get a thumbs up, Prasika, you can see the screen there. Perfect. Okay. So If you're coming through Ownr for the first time and you're looking to, set up any one of these types of businesses, or maybe if you have an existing corporation as well, you can definitely leverage Ownr, and we'll talk about those things. And if you have questions, you can always reach out to us. But so let's say you're coming through Ownr and you click on the Get Started button on our homepage. This is where it will take you. So for folks, if we're looking to set up a new incorporation, for simplicity, I believe most, if not everyone here, is based in Ontario. So we'll set up an Ontario incorporation here, and you can again see the breakdown of what the differences are between the two business structures that we're able to support here on Ownr. And then you'll come up with the company name, or you can go with a numbered company. But if we're going to be super creative, I can't even think of a creative name right now, so I'm just going to go with a company called Kelvin Consulting Sense. Okay, as you can see right here, you put in that name. Our system is tied to the government database, so we are able to let folks know if their name is conflicting with existing names that might be out there, or if it's too similar. This will be a helpful guide to help individuals understand, if their name will be approved, or at least the likelihood. This isn't a perfect science, right? So we aren't the government, and the government is, of course, the individuals who have the last say on whether a name gets approved or not. But this is a really strong indicator. And if you do find names that are too similar to yours, we would encourage you to come up with more descriptive and distinctive terms to outline what it is your company is going to be doing. So when you get to the application flow, it is relatively simple. Sometimes it could be as quick as 5 minutes to go through the whole thing, and I'll show you exactly how. So phone number, home address. This is just personal information of how we stay in touch with you. If you're a Canadian resident, check that off. If you're not, obviously uncheck that box. If you are a permanent resident, that includes you, so that you would check off that box. After that, we would come into the corporate information section. So here in Ontario, you can set up a federal or a provincial incorporation. Just wanted to let folks know there is not a huge difference between the two. A federal and a provincial incorporation are pretty much the same, minus a couple of different small differentiators, which I'll talk about. But just to let you know, you are able to have clients across the country, even if you're set up as a provincial corporation. Just as if you're a federal incorporation, you can only do business in Ontario, and that would be fine as well. Okay, you can have clients internationally. This will not restrict. What are the differences, you might be asking? The main differences are the following three things. Number one, with a federal incorporation, it is $100 cheaper than a provincial incorporation. That is something that you will notice. That is something that people are interested in. And that is purely because of the government fees. A federal government charges $100 less than provincial. Number two, your name is registered across the country. So it will make it a little bit more unique and distinctive by being registered across the country. But keep in mind, this is not the truest form of name protection. You would be looking at trademarking if you are looking for the truest form of name protection. And number three, paperwork. A federal incorporation does have a little bit more paperwork, in addition to a $12 filing fee you need to do for the annual return that Prasika was just talking about every single year. Aside from that, everything else is pretty much the same. So again, it does not make a huge difference when you choose between a federal or provincial, except for those pieces that I just highlighted. From here, you'll be able to select where you want your registered head office to be. If this is your home address, that's perfectly fine. The only thing it cannot be is a PO box, okay? So that is the only important distinguishing factor to make. When it comes to the industry, choose the industry that is closest related to the work that you'll be doing as part of your business operations. Here's a set list provided by the government. Just choose the closest thing. And then your fiscal year end. Your fiscal year end is when your tax year is going to come to an end. So this will capture, if you choose December, that means on December 31st, you're capturing from January 1 to December 31 every single year as your financial tax year, right? If you ever have any questions as you're going through this, we have some great support resources available to individuals to select there. We've talked about the name confirmation already. If you have a sole proprietorship, or if you have an existing partnership and you want to incorporate and you type in your name, you'll receive an error message that says, hey, this name is already taken. You may just have to sign one of the documents that we have available to basically transfer that name over to an incorporation. So if you do find yourself in that position, reach out to us and we'll be able to walk you through that process. And then here, we're getting into the meat and potatoes, right, of the application. Who is managing and owning this business? If you say by myself, we make it really simple for you. As you can see on the left-hand side, everything is grayed out. If I just said by myself and click next, it takes me right to the payment page and you're pretty much done. What we've done effectively is we have appointed you as the director, the president, and the 100% shareholder of your business. You by yourself are fulfilling all of these roles. We are automating this, and we are sending this off to the government to make sure that you're wearing all the right hats when it comes time to your incorporation. If, however, there are other people involved, there's a part, there's investors you're looking to bring on, there's other partners, then you would say with others, and probably likely you want to distinguish between owners and managers, right? So just keep in mind that directors of your company are the directing minds of the business who oversee the overall management of the company. Your officers are more the day-to-day responsibility. So you think about your president, you can create new positions like your CEO, CMO, whatever C title you want to give yourself. You can create that through here. And then last but not least, again, Prasika spent a good amount of time talking about shares and share classes. It is something that if you are a growing business or you're thinking about growth in the future, that you should be considering, which is, again, the ownership aspect, right? So if you added someone else, this will break down to 50-50. There's 3 people, it's 33% across the board. We do have an advanced mode if you do need more complex share structures to be created, where you can actually go into here and create your own share classes for your company, voting, non-voting, and get into all the details. So we won't spend too much time here because, again, everyone's company is going to be unique. For most folks, the simple mode is more than sufficient for what they need. Just simple voting shares, their ownership percentage, and that takes care of that. If you do require that additional layer, again, feel free to, we encourage you to speak with an accountant first and foremost, but once you get that information, you can come to Ownr, get the support from.
Oh no, did his internet go out?
I think so. Let's give it a minute. Maybe we'll come back. Yeah.
Kelvin,
Hi, Kelvin. We lost you there. We can't hear you.
Okay. Yeah, we'll give you a sec. We can't hear you still.
Can't hear me. Oh no.
Oh, no, now we can hear you.
There you go.
Okay. Am I back? Hopefully, yeah. It says my internet's a little bit unstable, so I apologize.
That's okay. You're good now. You can keep going. Okay, he froze
I
again.
think he's having trouble. It's okay.
I can
Technology fails us sometimes.
yeah. Let me
Yeah.
I think
can you
he's
hear
back
me?
though.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're
We're
good.
back. Okay, my apologies, everybody. Yeah, it's
Absolutely
one of
okay.
those things that, things that I can't control in life are internet, and other aspects. But hopefully, I wasn't gone for too long, and the bulk of what I explained did come across. Where I landed here was just on our pricing packages. So if you do have questions about pricing, again, Prasika and I can speak to that a little bit more. But in a nutshell, the plan on the left-hand side, that's what I call our starter package. If you're just looking for a simple incorporation where you have the government filings taken care of, the name reservations taken care of, and all the legal formation documents that we've highlighted today taken care of, that's the plan for you. We'll keep your company in good compliance. It's $500 upfront, $200 year over year to help you file your annual corporate return. Whereas the plan on the right-hand side, that's what I call our growth or flexible plan, where if you're looking to make many changes to your business, if you need to add a director, if you need access to managing your shareholders or add employees, or if you need access to legal documents, that's where that plan comes into play. So it's a more flexible plan, more advanced plan for companies in that growth stage. So that's where you can kind of make the decisions between the two. You can always upgrade to the managed corporation plan at a later time as well. And the cherry on top is going to be, we are an RBC backed company. So when you set up your business bank account with RBC, you'll be eligible to get the $300 back, from setting up your incorporation. And again, on top of that discount code that all of you have access to at the end of this presentation. So the very last thing that I'll highlight is once you have an incorporation set up, you will be able to see a platform that looks like this. We have a checklist for you. This is how you'll get the $300 back. Under your organization tab, you have your business number. If you need a tax number, you can request that through us. Your minute book section right here will have all those legal documents that we're generating for you so that you have a fully compliant and fully registered incorporation through and through. You can see your share structure here if you need to. So it is a really helpful platform to help you document everything that you need. You can upload existing documents that you have into this section right here so that all your files are kind of stored together as a corporation. So that's it for the demo side. I'm not sure if questions coming in were related to this, or Prisika, you were able to get to most of it. So yeah, I'll pass it over.
Yeah, no, there was just one last question. I was in the middle of typing it, but I'll just respond to you, Robert. You said, is there a benefit in including your adult children in this? Honestly, I would say that's really dependent on the business, and the answer will vary from person to person. I think it would be better to maybe discuss directly with an accountant to see if there would be any benefits, because it really does depend on like different situations. So I will just share my screen. There's only one more slide really, but last part is just resources. So this is pretty much, oh, I don't know if can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. This is pretty much the end. So this is your code, YSpace20. Everyone will have access to this, and we'll also send over, I think Alina, you'll send over the email and everything, right, with all the information. But some great things that we would recommend you guys take advantage of. We have some really great blogs, one of which that I shared actually in our chat. And there's like a bunch more that answers really specific questions. So take a look at that if you guys have any more questions. Also, the RBC refund, as Calvin was speaking to, that's available to everyone here in addition to the 20% off. So it really is a pretty great deal. So we recommend you guys take advantage of it. But we always do have more content and webinars available. So if you guys are interested, check those out too. And then there's Ownr perks. So if you guys do end up registering with Ownr, aside from this discount, the RBC discount, there's actually more partnerships that we have with a lot of other companies, specifically catered to entrepreneurs. So for example, like QuickBooks, or if you're looking to start a website, we have different companies that we work with that will give you discounts on their services, just because you're an Ownr subscriber. So definitely check that out as well. All of the links will be available to you guys. And that's pretty much it. That's the end of our presentation. I'll pass it back to Alina.
Great. Thank you so much, Prisika and Kelvin. Needless to say, this was so valuable. Guys, if you have any questions, feel free to drop your questions in the chat box. I already see there are questions coming in the chat box, but you can also raise your hand, unmute yourself, and ask the questions.
Yeah, I think we do have a couple of questions here, and maybe Prisika and I can kind of tag team on this. So maybe I'll throw the question over to you, Prisika. Can you incorporate with just one person, or do you need to have other people involved to form a board?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you can incorporate with just one person. So as we mentioned, there are those roles that need to be assigned. So basically your name would just be assigned to all three of them: shareholder, director, president. And yeah, it is actually quite common even with a lot of the entrepreneurs on our system. So most definitely. We have a more specific question. I'll read it out and then maybe Kelvin. So this is from Natasha. Hi, I own a small handcrafted skincare business. I own a small handcrafted skincare business owner. I'm a sole proprietor. I also have insurance. Right now, I don't make more than 30K a year. My question is, should I incorporate a business of the type of business I own, regardless of how much it makes?
Yeah, so this is again a very specific question, and what you'll need to consider here is a lot of what Prisika highlighted throughout the presentation about liability, about how much money you're going to be making, right? You mentioned you're not making more than $30,000 a year. Again, that's the threshold for needing a tax number. That's not necessarily the threshold for incorporating, right? So you do need to factor in the more holistic view of what type of growth do you foresee? Some folks will need to have an incorporation to be able, again, to maybe get business loans or apply for grants. So funding is an issue. Maybe you want to consider incorporation, right? So it's not a black and white or a response to that type of question. I would encourage you to maybe book a call with us if you'd like to chat about this further. But on the financial side of it, with how much money you are making, that is certainly an accountant question to determine if it makes sense for you to incorporate. But again, operating in the skincare, health type space as a sole proprietor, you are factoring into that spectrum of risk, right? Where do you fall in there? And does it make sense for you to incorporate to protect your own personal assets, as we've talked about?
Perfect. I'll take the next one. So Carlos, again, so there are quite a few questions, so we'll try to get through as much as we can. I am a sole proprietorship in business for almost 3 years. How is the process to incorporate, and when should you do it since, or when should I do it since I have to file taxes this year? So yeah, that's actually a really good question. When you're like, if you're a sole proprietorship and you want to incorporate, there's actually no transition period. So again, a sole proprietorship is one, it's associated to you, and then an incorporation is completely new entity. So you're creating something new. So the only thing really that you would, in a sense, transfer is maybe the ownership of the name. If you have the trade name registered with a sole proprietorship, and you want to keep that moving forward into the incorporation. But yeah, you could, it'll still basically be from the date that you incorporate, moving forward from that date, you would file your taxes for the corporation, and then from the date prior to would be still be counted as your sole proprietorship and personal taxes. Second question, I'll read it to you, Kelvin. What is the corporate veil and how do I not pierce it?
Yeah, I haven't heard that term since legal studies and I was back in school. That's a legal question and I will gladly defer to a lawyer. If you're thinking about, again, just the impact on liability and how that impacts you as an owner, again, generally speaking, when we talk about liability protection, that's why you incorporate, right? Making sure that you're separating your personal assets from your corporation. The corporate veil obviously speaks to points where that can potentially be pierced, but those are very unique situations. So I would strongly encourage you to speak to a lawyer if that is something you are concerned about.
Yeah. Second question as well, or the next question, how do you build a team without a budget? I think this one would also be maybe dependent on a few different things. So just again, if you're on a budget, it probably would be best to just maybe speak to an accountant and talk to them about how you should be managing the money. And maybe even if you should be hiring employees and what the process would be like if you're not going to be paying them out yet. So yeah, some of these questions, guys, unfortunately, we don't have the answers to, but yeah, definitely some financial and legal questions in here. I'll read the next one to you though, Calvin. I think this is one we can answer. Does Ownr generate the checklist based on your type of business? Samples could be opening a restaurant. Will the program generate the list to help guide you on what licenses you need and which equipment is recommended to buy? Or like opening a convenience store, where do I start? Where do I need to set up?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would love to see that within our checklist at some point in time in the near future. But for the time being, it is a relatively general checklist for individuals who are looking, again, for all small businesses, right? Things that you will need to do: set up your bank account, potentially get a tax number, fill out, I believe there's a section to talk about your profile as an entrepreneur, to give us a little bit more information to get a again better understanding of your business, right? So short answer is no, that's not customized, but keep in mind, depending on the type of business you have, you're planning to start, we do have different perks available. So just as a restaurant company in general, we have a partnership with Touch Bistro, we have a partnership with Open Table. These are helpful perks to help you get started. But anything when it comes to licensing is actually probably a question folks might have. I would encourage you to check with your local municipality, actually. It does go into that specific granular details when it comes to certain licensings that are approved by literally the city or township that you live in. So there's no blanket answer to that question, except when it comes to licensing, check with your local municipal guidelines on what you'll need for that.
Yeah. So sorry, we do have someone with their hand up. Sean, did you wanna maybe ask a question?
I did. The question that I have is specific for Calvin. Calvin, the offer of $300 back when you open up a business account, I just wanted to find out, does it have to be an actual business account, or can it be a checking account or a savings account, and that would be considered liable?
It needs to be a business bank account. So there's a selection of business bank accounts that RBC has available. When you register a sole proprietorship or when you register an incorporation, you'll get the opportunity to create a business bank account. So it will have to be those. Unfortunately, not just the checking, not just the regular savings personal account. That will not be eligible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So Alicia had a good question. If the corporation is a separate entity and it does go into debt or has a legal challenge against it, who is liable if if the corporation has little to no assets. So still, that's a really good question. So it still is the corporation, and like it doesn't mean you have like you're not responsible at all. So you're still involved in the corporation. The biggest thing is like your personal assets. So like if I own a house, they can't just go directly from my house. So they can only go within assets. So then basically you would be bankrupt as a corporation. And then you would have to figure out the next steps in order to pay off whatever the debt is or the issues are against you. But it just gives you a little bit of a barrier and protection towards anything that you already own. The next question is, where can you get more information about multiple DBAs under one incorporated name? If the parent incorporated company is EP Consulting, but the DBAs are example, Juice Company or a different business, July T-shirts, and EP Books, could a parent company have multiple sub businesses in different sales industries? 100%. I'll let Calvin answer it if you want.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think we get this question quite a bit on the daily of folks looking to run different businesses under one corporation, or they ask, do I need to separate all my companies and set up multiple corporations for different business ideas? So I believe I addressed this in the chat to, I think, Earl or someone else earlier about the DBA, right? Which is essentially a trade name. You can register a trade name in association with your corporation to be able to operate as that name, right? You may see this on invoices that you get from certain individuals or certain groups where you thought their business name was something, but their business name is actually a numbered company, for example, right? But they're operating as Kelvin's Consulting or Prasika's Pens or something like that, right? So yes, you are able to have different trade names under a corporation, the government registry, and if we have some time, I'll try to find the link to send over to you in terms of where you'll be able to find more information about that. But the question about whether or not you should have multiple sub businesses under your corporation, for me, the conversation usually comes to what are the types of businesses? Is it simple? Will you be organized when you have 4 different businesses running under one number and one bank account? Or does it make sense to separate these things? That's where an accountant could come in to give you advice on whether or not you should incorporate multiple companies. So bottom line is, it is possible for people to have different lines of businesses, right, under one corporation. But it may not make the most sense for everyone. So you should really evaluate what are these businesses, does it make sense to separate, and so forth.
So Amy has a question. Calvin, I'll let you take this one. I have a further question about liability. I was told if someone is going to sue me, they can sue me, the individual who is working in the corporation for negligence. They do not have to sue the corporation itself, at which point they can go for all of my personal assets as well as my shares in the corporation. Is this true?
Yeah, that's one of those questions where, again, like at face value, like if you personally did wrongdoing as an employee, right, employee to employee, there may be potential risk within a corporation, within a business. But again, when we're speaking in general terms, for you as a business owner, as a person who owns the company, when you are operating, if your company was sued, you would be, if your business is sued, your personal assets are protected, right? Again, with individual cases, what is the nature of the issue at hand, right? Just because you're incorporated doesn't give you a get out of jail free card entirely to be doing anything and whatever, right? So there are obviously consequences and liabilities when it comes to any individual and any business altogether. So when we speak about liability protection, right, in its generic sense, it's that your personal assets are protected if your business is gone after, right? Simply put. When someone asked about the corporate veil and all these different things, there are always unique situations and unique circumstances for each of you. And if you have concerns about these specific matters, would strongly encourage you to speak to a lawyer at that point in time if you believe there is additional risk to the work that you might be doing or the potential situation you might find yourself in.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelvin. And then last question here, it's from Charles. If your business is primarily online and your profits are coming in from another country, like the States, are your tax obligations only to Canada or all countries involved? And why would I need to incorporate in the US as well? So that's actually a really good question. We have a lot of entrepreneurs that actually operate all around the world, and even have corporations in different countries and are opening them in Canada separately. So you can most definitely be based in Canada and operate anywhere. And especially if you're primarily online, the only time you really need to be registered in that country or province, even depending on the type of work that you're doing, is if you have a physical presence there. So are you conducting business in this location? So it would, and in terms of like tax obligations as well, it is going to be like the place that you're located. So like some people will even like incorporate in Alberta because maybe their taxes are lower there. Like we've had some people that have come in and said that. So yeah, it's but in terms of like tax obligations and like your global like and you're working globally, still good to speak to an accountant for more details on that. But it is most definitely possible, especially if you're an online business and your business is primarily online. You can incorporate in Canada. So that looks like the last question. Any last minute questions coming in? Oh, yep, we do. So Amy has a question for everyone here. I work from home, and when I incorporate, I would prefer to not publicly list my personal home address. Does anyone else use a virtual office address? And if so, which one do you trust? I'm nervous because if this company does not forward my mail from the government and I miss something, I could potentially lose the corporation. So actually, maybe I might be able to answer that for you, Amy. So in terms of the virtual address, you can, so on Ownr, for example, if you were to incorporate through us, most of your like government issued documents regarding like the setup, we'll email that directly to you. So you won't lose those, but anything that's mailed to you, like we do, currently we don't have a partner, but we do work, there is a company called Anytime Mailbox. And we know that there's been some customers that we've worked with that have used them, and they said that it's pretty good. And I think Canada Post might also have something available, but you just got to keep in mind that you can't use a PO box. It has to be an actual address. But yeah, if anyone else has some answers, throw them into the chat. That would be awesome. And Janet has a last question. If it is $100 less to incorporate federally, why incorporate provincially? That's a really great question. I'll pass that over to Kelvin.
Yeah, so this is really a jurisdictionally driven question. So obviously we talked about Ontario, but just for transparency for some folks in provinces like Alberta and BC, it actually is a lot more expensive to incorporate federally. It really is just the unique nature of the way Ontario is set up, where the provincial incorporation cost is $100 more. But in other jurisdictions, a federally incorporated business can be, potentially like twice as expensive as the provincial one. So that's just across the board here in Canada. So if we're saying why in Ontario, right? Why in Ontario would you go federal or provincial? It really is from a simplicity perspective for some folks. Again, when you do your annual returns at the federal level, you report to the federal government. There's a little bit more paperwork involved, as we've talked about. There's a $12 filing fee. Some folks just don't want that headache, so they would go with a provincial incorporation instead. Avoid that $12 fee a year. Don't have to deal with as much paperwork, but that's why I made that emphasis earlier that the differences between the two are very marginal. So it would not be a significant impact on why you would choose one or the other, right? So again, if that name reservation across the country is something that appeals to you, that's why we see a lot of folks go with the federal incorporation altogether.
Yeah. And actually, since you're already speaking about that, I'm going to answer the question from you here. So now my company is in Toronto. Can I move my company to Yukon? So like, as Calvin was mentioning, with the federal incorporation, your company's name is registered in all provinces. So let's say, for example, you are looking to kind of expand into a different province, and you want to have you're going to have a physical location in that province. Your company's name is already registered there. So you can just kind of apply for an extra provincial registration, and it'll be a little bit of an easier transition. So that is one way to do it if you're federally incorporated. If you're provincially incorporated, you could still apply for an extra provincial. So it's within the same company, and it's just expanding your jurisdiction essentially. But maybe, yeah, just speak. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
And then Amy, sorry, you did have another question about the virtual address. I think for this question, it might just be better to speak directly with the company that you're going to be going with, and just see what their processes are and kind of how it works. But you will need to get that set up prior to getting the incorporation started. So just make sure that you're comfortable with it and all your answers are your questions are answered before proceeding.
That looks to be it, I think, in terms of questions. Alina, I know, how are we on time? I know, yeah, I know we had a couple hours dedicated to this, but
Yeah, if somebody has any last minute questions, something that comes in mind, please, now's the time to ask. So let's just give a minute to some folks who want to ask some question. In the meanwhile, I'm just going to, oh, that's great, Kelvin, that you're leaving your contact information as well. I'm also going to drop a survey to this session. Please share your feedback so we can keep providing similar sessions to all of you. Guys, are there any more questions? All right, okay.
yeah, I think these are just general comments here.
General comments.
Yeah. So yeah, if there are any, and I know some folks had some really specific questions as well. So we have our email addresses there. If you have if there's more to talk about with your business, we'd love to have that conversation with you, learn more about what you're doing, and be able to help you take that next step forward as well. So give us a shout.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So since there are no more questions, Kevin and Priscilla, I would like to thank you on behalf of Markham Small Business Center and Wisespace for sharing all your insights, your resources with us. I really appreciate your time and effort. This was a great and an extremely valuable session. I'm sure all the attendees really, really learned a lot today. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
No problem at all. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. And to all our attendees, thank you so much for joining Found Fundamental session. Thank you for the engagement, for the great questions and the conversation. I hope to see you all next week on our session that is on digital marketing. Thank you, Aiden, for being here. And I will be sending out the deck that Kelvin and Priscilla have shared with me. That's all from me. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye.